Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me? We have our final panel, final event for the show for KETO Con 2018. Can I get a whoop whoop? And we have our stories panel. So it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of crying, hopefully a lot of laughter, and hopefully you guys will be able to connect with the speakers as well as yourselves. So if I can have my panel come on up here and just file on in. You bet. Got it. Got it.
Oh, that's slippery on the
Yep. Yep. There you go. All right, so we've got 2 microphones, and we're just going to pass them around. Now, have you noticed the theme? Who's been to all the panels at this point? Okay, have you noticed the theme in the panels? There's something that they have in common, and then I'm different. Something they have in... Oh, that's what it is, right? Right, that's what it is. It used to not always be that way, but now... So we have a bunch of really smart people and me. So this is what's different here. Okay, so our stories panel, starting on the end, Allison Gannett, the ineffable Carrie Brown, Gillian Szollos, Jade Nelson, Shawn Mynar, and Vanessa Spina. And I believe I got all the names correct. That may be a first. That may be a first. So this is going to be an open question forum. So if you have questions for any of our speakers, our guests here, please form a single file line. Speak close to the microphone so that everyone can hear what you're asking, and so that we can get the question answered. So we've got our first question coming up.
Yes, we do. Hello. My question is, what is the one thing that you, as ketogenic professionals, have taken away from this KETO Con that you didn't either know or was highlighted for you personally, that you got from somebody else? I know all of you haven't been to every one of the talks, but that's my question.
I would like Gillian to go first on that.
That's a fabulous question. And we were just talking about this behind stage, actually. And I take away from these things a similar thing each time, in the sense that I am overwhelmed by the sense of love and community that comes into a building when all of us are here. And that always leaves me filled up again, so that I can go out there into the universe and deal with all of the stuff that gets put on me in the universe and have that recharge. But in terms of a really specific thing, Dr. Anna is going to make me test my urine pH. So from here on in, I am going to be testing my urine pH. Yeah, that would definitely be the thing for me.
All right, Carrie?
So Brian knows this about me, that I can never just have one thing. So I don't just have one thing.
Right.
So 2 things. I posted on Facebook yesterday that I'd had a migraine since Tuesday, and I was just fed up with it. And a random person on Facebook said, go to Ali Miller's booth and get her super turmeric. So I dutifully went to Ali Miller's booth and got her super turmeric, and no longer had a migraine. So,
Ali Miller to the rescue, yet again.
And I slept like a log, and I don't know if those 2 are connected, but it was awesome, whatever. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was, I had the opportunity and honor to talk to Dave Feldman behind the scenes yesterday, and he was explaining to me that he'd done an experiment. He was born a happy person. He was just always just very positive. He kind of, came out the womb that way, and he's always been that way. And he is the master of N=1 experiments. And he was sharing with me that he had recently done an experiment where he had upped his carbs to, I want to say 54%. And he said, I think it was like day 6 or 7, he fell into this massive depression, and he had the reverse experience of me. He found himself in this depression, and he had this amazing insight into what it's like to have a mental health struggle, to be depressed. And one of the things he remarked was that there was nothing he could do about it. He couldn't think himself out of it. It was just what it was. And it was the heavy carb load that had done that. And that was just so powerful to me, that somebody who does not struggle with depression had truly experienced it and now has a completely different view to what it's like to have depression. And that was a magical insight to me, that somebody had now experienced that. I mean, now of course he's back on his normal diet and that's gone away. But it was like, that was super cool to me, that somebody now has a personal experience of an enforced depression, and realizing that there was nothing they could do to change it. And that was so those are the two things that were magical for me.
Awesome. Allison?
We've been talking about this actually, because I was sitting next to you. One of my themes that I wanted to come into this was talking about insulin, and it just was magical to me that, don't you guys feel that everybody's been talking about insulin?
Rightfully so.
Which is just awesome, because I feel like it hasn't been talked about enough in the past. And then I always knew the connection between osteopenia, osteoporosis, and insulin, but it was interesting to hear the biochemical reaction that was going on behind it. I thought that was fascinating.
Okay. Jade?
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't attend many because I was so stressed out. But the one thing I can take away from this whole experience and being here at this conference is the community. It's one thing I believe very big in, and connection with people one-on-one as humans and not just social media. So having that here has been one of the greatest things. It has made doing this the best part. Plus, I love Vanessa's little slide. What was that thing called again? Keto fatigue. I took that away, and I'm almost like, I got to steal that slide.
We both said the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
That goes into our presentation.
Shawn?
Yeah, so I am kind of going to piggyback a little bit with the community thing, but I think more specifically how passionate we all are, like not just, of course, the speakers. I'm hoping that you can see how passionate we all are, but you also, I mean, just the general community and how passionate every single one of us is about what we're doing for our health, and how keto is just way more than the fad or whatever people are trying to make it out to be. And this really is something that we're going to really stick to and hopefully get the word out more and more. And I think we have that, all of us have that ability and that desire to really get the word out. So it makes me just really excited. I always get so excited in these types of situations, for sure.
You seem excited. Vanessa?
This was one that I had heard of before, but was reinforced, and it was Dr. John Lemansky. He calls ghrelin gremlin, which I love, but because it's the hunger hormone. But he talked about how if you have poor sleep, ghrelin is going to activate hunger in a big way the next day. And just the way he put it, it was a really good reminder and anchor. Because we've all had days like that where you sleep 3 hours and the next day you're like, I'm so hungry today, and you feel bad about it. But there's a scientific, there's a physiological reason behind it. So I thought that was a good reminder.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think, Brian, it's your turn.
What I got? So I want to magnify Carrie's. I got 800 plus things that I'm taking away, because that's how many people we had here. So, I mean, that's...
Thank you.
Wow, 800.
Good afternoon, ladies and Brian.
Good afternoon.
It's great to have an almost all-female panel.
I can leave. I can leave.
So I noticed, again, from fatiguing all the people around me in England about keto, that all the men that I influenced to become keto, or at least low carb, had a really easy time compared to the women. And clearly women are far more complex creatures, especially from an endocrine point of view. And I wondered what insights you had about hormone balancing, because women are often estrogen dominant, or some of the the menopausal women have all sorts of hormonal issues, and people who've been on the pill for 10 years, say, come off and have post-pill amenorrhea. So what insights could you share about women's endocrine?
Unless anyone wants to volunteer to go first, I'd like Shawn to answer that one.
I was going to say.
Yeah, I could talk about that for like 4 hours, and I do every week. So, no, I mean, I think the biggest thing, in order to not take up all this time, the biggest thing is that the difference between, obviously, men and women, like you said, are hormones. And so when people when women first transition into a ketogenic diet, a lot of times it's done with a little too much force or a little too quickly, and I know Vanessa talked about that, and it causes more stress than is really needed or should be happening to our bodies, and women are very sensitive to stress, specifically our hormones, obviously, and we already live pretty stressful lives, and then we add on, like, okay, I'm gonna go from eating all the carbs, I'm gonna eat no carbs, and that's super stressful on the body. So that's really the biggest thing that I see. And then the other big thing is that when we transition into ketosis, and maybe we've been keto for a while even, suddenly we start like not eating. And that's another thing that could cause a lot of stress on the body for some women. Their body's just not ready for that, and that's a stressor. And then once again, those hormones. And really the biggest thing, you can tell, like again, kind of with my talk, you can tell what is and isn't working for your female body based solely on your hormones. They're gonna show you almost immediately. And so if you've come into keto with some sort of imbalance already, a lot of times it's gonna even show its face further or maybe give you some symptoms you didn't even know you had. So you can use all of that to determine, kind of if it is or isn't working for you, if you need to take it slower, add more fat or add more food, add more protein, all that stuff. That was my really quick answer that it could have taken a lot longer.
That was great. Does anyone want to add anything to that? Yes, Gillian.
Estrogen dominant, right here, mermaid body. And I wanted to say, Vanessa, you had a slide that spoke to you coming to keto for weight loss, and you had the sort of neurological side effects. I came to it the other way around. I came to keto trying to stop seizures, and I ended up losing 90 pounds and no longer having fibromyalgia and no longer dealing with medication for arthritis and feeling better than I have in my 20s. And thank you, I can deadlift 225 pounds now.
What?
Which is awesome. But as a woman, I, of course, was looking at all the keto boards too and seeing all the guys dropping 100 pounds in 6 months. That just did not happen for me. I lost about 50 pounds in my first year and then 40 pounds in my second year. And I was also doing DEXA scans all the time, so I could see exactly what was happening to my mass and to my body composition. And although I lost 90 pounds on the scale, there was actually a much more significant shift than that. I lost much more fat and I gained lean mass. And as a 49-year-old woman, I also increased my bone density significantly. My T-score, for those of you out there who know what that is, and it's a measurement of bone density, went from 1.1 when I started keto to 2.7 last week. 2.7 is incredibly high for a 49-year-old woman who's not supposed to be able to build any bone density. So keto has really been amazing for that, but I also struggle with lipedema, and that means that this fat down here is dysfunctional. It does not work the way the rest of your adipocytes do, and keto has been helpful for that, but I'm in the place now where I need to tweak it a little more. And for those of you out there who suffer with the same fat disease, we hear all the time that type 2 diabetes is chronic and irreversible, and we know that that's all bunk. Well, the same thing is told to those of us with lipedema. It's chronic and irreversible, and I just don't buy it. I think that we just don't understand it enough. So I put a challenge out there to all of you. Find me on social media. If you know something I don't know, which is very likely, please send that information to me, and together we can work it out, because I would really like to help that, in that community. And keto is a great place to start, but we've got hormones that are challenging, and we have to figure that piece out too. It's not as easy as it is for you guys.
Allison, did you want to?
Sure. So because I deal with preventing cancer and conquering cancer with my clients, a lot of people come back with their genetics that show that they are absorbing estrogen like a sponge. So a lot of my clients have hormone issues or hormonally driven cancers. And one of the biggest problems I see with my male clients versus my female clients is I tell my male clients, you put 3 pans on the stove, you put the equivalent of a stick of butter in each pan, you cook the protein in one pan, the vegetable in the other pan, and maybe you make this salad in the other pan. So the thought of putting 1 stick of butter equivalent in each one of those dishes for men is like, hell yeah. The women are like, you know, I grew up, I think you were saying the analogy of the spray bottle with the lettuce leaf. You know, you're only allowed to get a mist of fat. And the hardest part for me personally was making that jump towards fat being my friend. And then with all our hormones being made out of fat, and then the magic happening when insulin gets below 3, that is when our old fat cells can open and it become brown fat cells instead of white fat cells. When that exchange happens, that's when all the hormones that we've stored throughout our life come out of those fat cells. I see a lot of women quit at about 6 months when that happens because they feel terrible. So a lot of people are running around saying, keto's awesome, keto's awesome. If you have a hormone imbalance, it takes a while for the insulin to come down. When the insulin comes down, then the hormones start coming out of the body, and then a lot of weird smells, weird rashes, the keto fatigue can happen. So don't be afraid of that if that happens down the line, because it just means that something really good and transformational is about to happen, and there's a really bright, happy light on the other side.
Anyone have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, that was very great answers.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
Well, I have a statement and a question. So the statement is that since this conference, I'm coming out of the keto closet in my real world.
Very nice.
I tell people, oh, I just don't eat grains. Oh, I just don't eat sugar. And they're like, okay. But if I say keto, they're like, and I'm proud now to be a keto person. And I'm going to share the word. So, and I want to ask you in terms of being in this influencers the last year or 2, 3, however long you've done this, how has the world changed? I mean, have more people come to your YouTube sites? Have you had more? Is it really, really booming, or is it slowly growing?
It's really, really booming.
Okay, Vanessa?
I think of it as like a tidal wave, that we're just in the very, very, very early, time of it. It's going to be so massive, but it just keeps going up and up and accelerating. And I think we haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah.
Carrie?
Yes. I'm one of those people personally who I never had to come out of the keto closet because I simply don't care what people think of me.
Carrie, can you hold the mic closer to you?
So that's better. Hello. I don't care what people think of me, so I've always said, well, I'm keto, and if nobody's ever kind of attacked me for being that or tell me that's bad or whatever, I just don't care. But I find an increasing number of people who I know personally are now coming to me and saying, okay, how do I do this? Or so it is growing and growing and growing, and it's awesome. And my hope is that we can just help as many people as possible to understand how healing keto is for so many different things. So I think, as Vanessa said, we're just getting started, and it's going to be massive.
Yeah.
Jade?
Right before I stepped on stage, Brian hugged me, and I said, this is the beginning. And I really believe right now that we're at the beginning of what keto can be for mainstream and everything. And in relation for what I do with neurological conditions and epilepsy, it's just coming into the limelight, and I think it's going to allow people to step out of the epilepsy closet and come into a world, because I keep going to different events and speaking at places, and people want to know more, and people want to know more. So in another year, who knows what it's going to be like, right?
Gillian?
I think you just said it there, babe. People want to know. People want to know. We don't want to be ignorant anymore. We know that there's another option. And it distresses me that the option has to be generated from a grassroots level. But that's what this is, guys. That's what KetoCon is. It is grassroots level. It is people taking back control of their health and identifying the fact that food is medicine. Bottom line, food is medicine. We have to stop poisoning ourselves and start feeding ourselves. And in doing so, we are going to see so many great things come ahead. And we have the ability to go to our physicians. We have the ability to influence our colleagues by saying, you know what? I'm on keto. You know what? This is why. You want some information? Go see Keto Evangelists. These are the kinds of things that are going to make the difference to the future. But if we stay in the closet, we don't help anybody. And if we're fractious with our doctors, we don't help anybody. If we take them one or two carefully chosen research articles and say, hey, you might want to get on this train with me, then not only are they going to help us in our journey, they're going to help everyone who comes behind us. So we are the ones making the change right now. And that is a beautiful thing, ladies and gents. That's a beautiful thing.
Can I just, I know I'm not, can I answer as well?
Please.
All right, so over the past 5 years or so, I've noticed a specific trajectory. I was talking to some people out there yesterday, and I'm anticipating that the wave will break in about 10 years. And people might think that's a long time, but it's not a long time. Because we're talking about having to fundamentally change how people perceive their food, right? How they fundamentally fuel themselves. And the way that happens, as Gillian said, is by each and every one of you individual people going home and being happy. I'm not kidding. When you go home and you live your life and you are happy being the person that you are, living the purpose that you know you're living, you are going to attract people around you. And they are going to say, why does my life suck? Why does your life not suck? And thus the conversation shall begin.
All right.
So just go be happy. That's how we're going to break this. That's it. That's all there is to it.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes, please.
So basically, I want you all to go out there and be the change you want to see in the world.
Yay. Thank you. Okay, I'm in a cooking group where a bunch of ladies change houses every month and host a meal.
Hold on. They don't change houses, right? They
Right.
Okay.
We take turns hosting.
Because that's extreme, and I'm interested in that.
How about this? We take turns hosting a meal at our house.
Got it.
Last month we did Rachel Ray, and there were 7 pasta dishes, and I about went, oh, facepalm, right? So I want to host a meal at my house. So I want to hear from you. If you were to do that, what would be your favorite keto meal to serve that could convince some carb addicts that keto is a wonderful, delicious way to eat?
All right, so before Carrie answers this.
I know yours is all meat. I know
Well,
yours
okay,
is all
hold
meat.
on. I want to say 2 things, and I hope I don't throw water on this. I don't mean to. You can't, first of all, convince them. That's not your job.
But I can give them a hint.
But, right, you can show them how glorious it is. Carrie Brown's cookbooks. But
I have all the...
always beef. It's just
Okay.
always beef.
Now these are ladies. These are ladies that like comfort food, you know.
Small beef. Beef with a hug. I mean, it's fine. All right, so who wants to go first? Carrie, go first. Yeah.
Mine's easy. I would just have a keto ice cream buffet, like 20 different flavors of my ice cream, and that will be it.
Dinner.
I'm going to give you my favorite recipe. Well, I have many, but I really love trying to get more fish into my diet. And so I will choose a white fish usually, and I will put a quarter of a cup of mayo, quarter of a cup of butter, quarter of a cup of Parmesan cheese, bake it for 5 minutes with some MCT oil, take it out of the oven, cover it in that cheesy mayo, buttery mixture, and then shove it back in the oven for another 10 minutes. Amazing. Serve it with asparagus, it'll be a knockout.
First off, don't tell them it's keto. Wait till the very end. I would make, so these are the two things I make, and people love it, and I don't tell them what it is. It's the bacon cheeseburger casserole by Rolled Me, and their coleslaw. And then I would make either jalapeno wrapped bacon or asparagus and then I would make Carrie's the caffeination station, right? Is that the one? Yeah, I would make that for dessert. Don't tell them it's keto, just go, we're eating a healthy meal. And then when they're all done.
Well, you're good.
I'm good? Okay. When you're all done, you go, that was all keto. Just like that.
And then you have to smile diabolically.
And test their blood sugar before and after, just for.
Yeah. And even
and
better.
then eat Rachel Ray and see what their blood sugar is like 3 days later.
Yeah, really. Welcome to dinner. I'd like to prick your finger, right?
So one of my favorites for my family, well, they love all my food. I don't cook separately for the rest of my family. It's just delicious. And that's what you have to think of keto is yummy. That's the French paradox with all the fat. So one of my favorite is fried chicken. And what I do is I dip the chicken in an egg batter. And then I pulverize Epic pork rinds, the salt and pepper flavor. Roll the chicken in the pork rinds, and then I deep fry it in some type of keto fat. Makes the best fried chicken ever. And then do some kind of fun thing like a cauliflower mashed potato, but put like 4 sticks of butter in there. Mm-hmm. And they'll be like, wow, this is cauliflower? Make a really good salad dressing. Make a fun dipping sauce, like a chimichurri dipping sauce. Make a spicy keto mayonnaise. And then I always do my mocha lava death life by chocolate cake for dessert and my dairy-free ice cream. And then they're all like, amazing.
Yeah, my favorite thing to do, I don't cook a whole lot. I mean, I do, but nothing really spectacular. I'm just kind of very simple. But for parties or gatherings, I love just to do like a charcuterie type plate with like all these awesome meats and like grass-fed raw cheeses, and even have some dairy-free cheeses like the Kite Hill kind of cream cheese type stuff, or they have dips and things like that, because I don't eat dairy in my keto. So just that kind of thing. You can even do some like seed crackers if that's something, and some nuts, and just have all this kind of snack type stuff. So people love that. It's super fun to eat that kind of snack type thing. Obviously, they don't know or care that it's keto necessarily, but you can tell them that later. And then I would do, like for dessert, just do some coconut cream, like whipped up with some berries or something. Again, it's something that's so simple that people would potentially take home and continue doing for themselves, that they don't realize they probably would eat that regardless, and it's keto no matter what. And I'm super interested because thinking about having Rachel Ray all pasta, can you imagine how bad they felt after that meal? And then now they have this same kind of situation, but it's all keto-friendly stuff. And they probably feel amazing afterwards, like no digestive issues. They don't feel like they have to go home and immediately go to bed, that kind of stuff. So I think that'd be a really fun experiment.
Just for the record, you had me at meat.
I know, right? Meat.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
I know there's some foods that are specifically like conversion foods because I've used them to convert people, despite what you say. But I noticed that the most popular recipes in my program and book are my special burger sauce. It's like a Big Mac kind of sauce with like lots of bacons, like bunless bacons or burgers are so easy, and just steak and béarnaise sauce, like steak and hollandaise. It's just amazing, and cheesecake. Keto cheesecake, like just everyone loves cheesecake, and then when they're done, you can be like, that is fat burning cheesecake.
And I'll just throw in one other thing. It is meat based, but you can take like romaine lettuce or even cabbage leaves and cook. I trust me. Hear me out. I know it's a vegetable, but these are for people who are not me. And you can ground some ground beef and put any number of these sauces in it and seasonings and stuff, and just have a sort of a taco kind of thing. And people think, oh, it's a wrap, and that's normal food, and there's no like, you're a weirdo. kind of thing. So it's something they could buy at whatever restaurant, but it's better because it tastes great. It's not like absent all the things that we enjoy eating. So it's another option.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So I've had the pleasure of listening to all the talks this weekend, and my takeaway is that keto seems to work for almost anything that ails you, whether it is cancer or bipolar or epilepsy or digestive issues, and it's not just a quick way to lose a few pounds. So what do you think, with all these benefits, what's the fundamental difference that makes some people like us willing to try this and others not even willing to look into it and learn?
Desperation. I know that's what it was for me. You try everything and you have to have courage to try something again and risk failing when you've tried so many other things. But if you're desperate enough and you're open-minded enough, I think those two things together.
Jade?
The drive to want better and not give up, to know that there's some answer out there. And I think the people that can stick to keto see what their reason is and believe that there's something better. I think so when people are able to do that, so there's less cheat days.
Shawn?
Yeah, I would say, I guess maybe it's kind of, biohacker mentality, if that's not what it is, but just wanting to learn more about you and your body and being willing to use yourself as an experiment. I think a lot of people are afraid of that because especially when it's something like keto and it's like, you have to eat all this fat. Does that mean I'm going to gain 100 pounds in 2 weeks or something ridiculous? It gets scary. But for me, and I probably all of us up here, it was just, again, wanting to do something to get myself healthy again and willing to do this experiment and that experiment and that experiment and that test and this test to find that thing.
Gillian?
I think it's safe to say that we are all early adopters. And the reason I think that we're all early adopters is that we all came to keto because something was broken in us and we were desperate to fix it. The reality is, as Brian points out, 10 years from now, maybe even 3 years from now, this will be so mainstream, this will be talked about so frequently because all of you are going to go home and go out of the closet and talk to your friends and family that they'll have it as an option. Frankly, we didn't even have it as an option until we physically went and searched for it and found it hidden under a rock and extracted it out and pulled it apart and said, how can I use this for me? You guys don't have to do that. And the people who you know don't have to do that because all of these people have created amazing resources that are going to make your journey 10 times easier than it was for many of us. And that, I think, is the difference. We all came to this because we were desperately sick. And a lot of people are now going to come to this without even knowing that they're desperately sick. I didn't even know I had pre-diabetes before I got epilepsy. When I looked at my labs and saw that my HbA1c was 6.2, I said, wait a minute, isn't that pre-diabetic, kind of borderline on diabetic? Nobody had mentioned that to me now. No, my labs are 5.2 now, and they went down as low to 4.6. So they're a little bit higher, but this is what I think is happening now, is that this is becoming more accessible for everybody else, and that's a beautiful thing.
Carrie?
I mean, for me, if you heard my talk, you know that, keto for me was maybe the only thing that was going to keep me alive. So for me, the people that are going to come are the people who need, as Vanessa said, they're desperate. They're like, maybe this is the last thing. It's fascinating to me listening to people here is that keto is becoming known for weight loss. Oh, keto, you do that for weight loss. That's not why any of us did it. We came for, cancer and bipolar and epilepsy and all these other reasons. My fear is that is going to get lost in the keto message. And I desperately...
I will not let that happen.
Me either. I desperately want to make sure that, I know I only focus on mental health, but people with mental health issues wouldn't say, I think I'll try Weight Watchers for my mental health, right? I mean, why would they do that? I don't want it to be that people would think the same thing about keto. Well, I'm not going to try keto because that's for weight loss. So I want to shout very loudly about everything other than it being for weight loss, because I want people to know that that's not what it's for. It's for the general health. It's for the amazing, miraculous changes that it can make in so many different diseases and illnesses. That's why I shout so loudly the way that I do.
And my fear about keto is, I saw it on Women's Day magazine this week. Anybody else see that? Yeah. And did anybody flip to the recipes? And I was thinking of how many people couldn't do those recipes for keto, that it's going to become keto one size fits all, and we're not all made the same, and we've talked about that a lot over the past few weeks, but we need to spread the word on how do you find out if you have the genetics to process dairy or not. Can you do caffeine or not? Can you do meat or not? Can you do plants or not? All that. But I think the motivation part, it's interesting when I talk to my clients, I kind of feel like in the first 15 minutes, if they have it, like that thing that you're talking about, I think everybody I've talked to in this room has that thing. And I don't know if I can put my finger on it. It's like a quest to question authority, I think, in a lot of ways. My doctor told me I had to have surgery, chemo, and radiation, and that's the only way I would have any success. And then luckily, my keto doctor said, ask them what success means. Do you know what success means in the cancer world? That you live one day past your planned expiration date. I was given 6.8 months to live. So if I did surgery, chemo, and radiation, I would live 6 months, 6 months, 8 days, and, +1. And that wasn't good enough for me. So I wanted, that terminal diagnosis drove me to find a better answer. And I think almost if my cancer was less severe, then I might not have looked so hard. And I didn't know that I had all these other conditions inside of me, prediabetes, polycystic ovarian disease, Hashimoto's, all those things that disappeared with keto. So I really do believe from the bottom of my heart that cancer was my greatest gift because it gave me keto. So you guys all take keto and run with it.
Can I answer your question with a question?
Sure.
What drew you to it?
For me, it started out as I was on my way to type 2 diabetes, elevated blood sugar and insulin. And so that was what kind of drew me and kept me. Then I discovered that I've had lifelong stomach digestive issues, and they disappeared almost instantly. And I didn't even realize how bad it was until they weren't there anymore. And so, yeah, it started as one thing. It led to other things. Anxiety. I used to be a very anxious, nervous person. I still am to a certain extent, but it's helping. So, yeah, I'm uncovering all these.
So all of those things, those are the people you want to find. If you're asking, like, how do I find the people who are going to go to keto, you got to find those people. Because that drove you there. That's going to drive them there, right? Yes, there's a personality thing too, but it's a certain level of brokenness that, why not? We've all heard, should I try it? I've got this, that, and the other. Well, clearly what you're doing ain't working, so why not? So you were driven there because of some reason, and you found all the other benefits. So find that same reason that other people need to be driven to it and start talking to them. Start driving them forward.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
So I want to follow on a little bit with what Gillian, Carrie, and Allison were saying, and talking about keto kind of as a trend, and we're kind of at the bow wave of the ketogenic movement. And one of my concerns is that in an effort to get on the bandwagon, everybody's going to jump into it with a one-size-fits-all type of thing, and it ain't that. I'm concerned that, you see diet fads come and go all through history, diet fads come and go. I'm afraid that people are going to consider keto as just another fad. And I hear this from my family. Oh, that's just another fad. You're jumping on another bandwagon, yada, yada, yada. And they don't understand what keto's all about and how it's helping me. But I'm afraid that there are going to be there are going to be a lot of people out there that are going to feel the same way, and keto may end up, they're going to try and bring it down. I don't want to see keto go away. But one of the issues is that keto flies in the face of the medical and pharmaceutical communities, because if we're fixing our own health, they ain't making money. So I feel it's incumbent upon me to help educate my doctor. My doctor is pro-low carb, but when I had my labs done, I had to go in and research my labs myself and go to my doctor and say, lay each one of my labs down and say, okay, here's this, I'm concerned about this, what are we going to do about it? Well, I don't know. And I said, okay, fine, I'm doing keto. And so I've been trying to help educate my doctor, but our medical schools aren't doing that. So how do we get this message out to the medical community, to the pharmaceutical community, to the dietetic community, nutritionists, etc.?
Can I take a swing at this first? And then I promise I'll shut up on this one. Well, I may break my promise. I'm a guy. I'm a guy. What am I? If you put your doctor out of business because they no longer need you, then I'm sure that doctor will find another job in some other thing. Like, don't worry about them. They'll be fine. They're smart enough to be a doctor. They can do other stuff. Don't even sweat that. How do you educate the medical community? You go in and you say, this is what I do, take a look at my labs, and they go, it shouldn't be that way. And you go, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
And then you say, if you are intellectually honest and you care about your patients, what are you going to do about it? If you want the medical community to stop and take notice, make them stop and take notice. You say to your doctor, this is what's going on. I've told you what I'm eating, and this is what the results are. What are you going to do about it? And if they don't care, they don't care. Find another doctor. But if they're being intellectually honest, they actually care about helping people, they will have to stop and take notice. I know of no rigorous, intellectually honest physician who would stop and say, nah, I'm not even going to think about it. They're going to be interested. They're going to be intrigued. So just, again, be keto, be happy, and let the world follow along, is all I'm saying. I'll let it over. Who wants to go first? Allison wants to go first.
I've had a lot of trouble with doctors, both for myself and my clients. And it wasn't until I learned that the American Medical Association is funded by Big Pharma. So when they go to medical school, they're getting trained with that mantra, and then they get their certificate and they sign for that. If my doctor, my oncologist, mentions anything besides surgery, chemo, radiation, or a clinical trial, he will lose his license. And so he refuses to talk keto with me in the doctor's office. But now I understand why. And I actually am not doing like what you said, Brian, trying to convince him about keto. He runs my labs. I don't say anything about keto.
Right.
It's
Right.
okay. I have a whole team of lovely doctors that help me. I have an open-minded neurologist that believes in keto, so I can talk to him about keto because he's an epileptologist. And so he's allowed to talk about keto because epilepsy is a known and accepted use to use keto. Even though he can't talk about keto for cancer, he's allowed to have that discussion with me. Now, my GP may or may not want to talk about keto, but if people can go to integrativemedicine.com, does anybody know?
Yeah.
And then what is the other one? Functionalmedicine.com. Then you put in your zip code, and then it gives you a list of practitioners in your area, and then this is my trick. You call them up, and you say, hey, do you do 23andMe SNP analysis for methylation and DNA? And do you do blood chemistry diagnosis? And if the person goes, huh? You hang up. And then you keep calling that whole list in your area, and then all of a sudden you'll get someone who will be like, yes, that's what we do. Add that person to your team. You don't necessarily need to subtract your other specialists. Now, rheumatologists, I have a bigger problem with. They're hard to find good ones. But you can keep your specialist and your acupuncturist and your masseuse and your functional doctor and your epileptologist and your oncologist and your brain surgeon. For me, I have 20 people on my team, and each of them does a job. And it's okay.
I have to agree with that. I think that's really important. And I'm going to give you a very abridged version of a pretty personal story for me. I have a young daughter. She's 17 now, almost 17. When she was 14, she became very, very depressed. And she was put on Zoloft. And 2 weeks later, she was in hospital with suicidal ideation. And my heart was broken. And I got her labs back, and there were a bunch of things that weren't looking right to me. But everybody in the hospital said, oh, no, that's normal. And I said, but it's not normal. And they said, oh, no, that's fine. It's got nothing to do with her mental health. Go take it up with your family doctor. Long story later, having come to see Carrie here last year, I learned about MTHFR. And if you don't know what that is, write it down and look it up. It's important. And my daughter turned out to be a homozygous mutant for this particular gene mutation, which is why she had such a pronounced response to the SSRI that she was put on. I then took that information to her psychiatrist and said, hey, look at this. It's all over the literature. What's MTHFR, said the psychiatrist. I don't believe you. Well, 2 months later, he decided to enter her into a trial, do a whole bunch more genetic analysis, and he called me up and said, oh my God, she has not even got one. She got one drug on her green list. Everything else was on the red list. And I said, duh. And you might want to look into this whole MTHFR thing. But we work together, and now he's the one telling my daughter, you know what, you need to take methylated B vitamins. He didn't know what that was a year and a half ago. So it takes time, and you can bring people on side. And sometimes, you know, as you've pointed out, it's not fair to bring them on side because it exposes them too much. So you really have to do the research and look around and find the person who's going to be good for you. But you are your own best advocate every single day of the year.
I've kind of come to the conclusion that you lead by example. And I would give anything to sit in medical schools and share stories like this, because the more people hear it and the younger the medical students are, the more of an impact I believe we can make. But in the meantime, do you, and don't worry about what the doctor's thinking. I've come, over all the years, I was once told by one of my neurologists that, Jade, I'm simply a tool for you to use. I provide you with the information, but ultimately you must make the decision on your own. And I think you need to treat all your doctors like that, whether they think they are God or not. So expecting to change someone's mind can be a very long and hard uphill battle. So I wouldn't bother. I would just do you. And it will eventually catch up. Just like Brian's saying, all of this will catch up, and by then they'll jump on the bandwagon because they'll find a way to make money elsewhere, right?
Does anyone else picture Jade in the medical school sitting just in the corner going, ha, wrong, as they're talking
Brian,
about
that's you, not me. I know how to play the game sometimes.
Yeah, fair enough. Shawn?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that and to kind of talk more about how do we keep keto alive is like, of course, we all share our stories. We all keep doing this on a regular basis and don't ever stop saying that. And then I think we can all kind of agree that if someone's not ready to learn more and hear about it,
Absolutely.
like there's kind of no point. You know, like you can try, and I do this with my family. Tried this with my family, and they aren't ready to hear it. So I'm not gonna do that. Same thing can go for doctors. That doesn't mean that in a year from now, you can't go back to that same doctor and have these results or whatever. Maybe at that point they are willing to listen, or your friends are, or your family members are. That's going to be, I think, the good thing that we see come out of this being this movement that's having so much momentum is that there's going to be more and more people ready to start hearing what you're saying. But until then, just focus on the ones that are already willing.
The analogy that we often hear, that we banter about, is You don't tell an alcoholic one time you have a problem, and they go, oh, you're right, I've got it fixed. It's the same thing. If someone's ingrained in a dogma, you have to repeatedly nudge them and let them, that you can't force them to make that decision. You have to, unless they're your kids, and then you can drag them along kicking and screaming, because that's what you have. Yes, Vanessa.
I think what Shawn said is so right. If someone isn't ready for the information, they won't hear it. But I think it's also really important to go back. So, for example, when my doctor wanted me to have part of my colon removed, it's important for me to, I didn't try to convince him, but then to go back and say, hey, look, I did this gluten thing. I cut it out. I didn't have to have surgery. So then he can maybe, if he, I don't know, is inclined, ask someone else presenting with the same symptoms to say, maybe try going off gluten. So it's important for us to maybe do that. And just on the second point, I honestly, truly believe, and you can call me, overly optimistic, I don't think this is a fad. I think the doctors who don't join in are going to be completely left behind.
I agree.
And that this is not a fad. It's going to be our new nutritional guidelines at some point if we're all successful in doing what we're doing.
Yes. Carrie?
I'm becoming famous for having fired my entire medical team and becoming my own detective, and then bringing on board people who understood what I had found out by my own work. So to you all, I would say, invest in yourself, become your own detective. You know your bodies better than anybody else because you feel. You see how your body's responding despite what the doctors or the medical professionals tell you. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to say, that doesn't make sense to me. Don't be afraid to ask questions and ask more questions and ask more questions. And if that doesn't make sense, find someone for who they can make it make sense to you. So medical professionals are great when they're helping you, but don't be afraid to move to new ones, and don't be afraid to just be your own detective. Go on the internet, talk to people, reach out to us, or whatever your issue is. If it's cancer, talk to Alison. If it's mental health, talk to me. Reach out to us. We can point you to sources of information where you can start to gather data that's pertinent to you and step by step make a path going forward, and then bring on the professionals that you meet to help you resolve your specific issue.
So one thing I want to point out, if you haven't caught the theme of what everyone is saying, is in order for the medical community to change, and if you want to change the mind of your doctor, it has to start with being evidence-based. Taking that, extrapolating it back, that means you got to do the work for them. Right? Gillian's a perfect example. She hears something, she investigates, she does a crap ton of research because Gillian does that sort of stuff. She takes it to her doctor, right? And then the doctor is faced with evidence. Doctor says, I don't believe you, right? But then intellectually honest doctors are going to pursue and investigate. This is what I'm saying. So it all starts with evidence. Like to Allison's point, they can't just do stuff because they're going to lose their license. But if you can show them evidence, and if you can nudge them in the direction that there is actual evidence in the literature that they can quote and that they can cite that gives them the defense when someone says, you're a quack, and they say, well, I'm not a quack, the literature says this, and I'm just following through. And everyone goes, fine, but I don't like it. And then
Brian, that's awesome. And I want to say, when you're bringing your doctor evidence, go to PubMed.com.
Yeah.
Type in whatever you want to type in. Let's say it's your type of epilepsy and MTHFR, or a type of epilepsy and blood chemistry, or cancer, ketogenic diet, liver cancer. You put that in there, it just is amazing how many studies are out there. Those are the only studies your doctor's going to care about.
Right.
Not Time Magazine,
Right.
not Women's World, not Cosmopolitan. Bring them the real papers.
Now, I want to tag onto that as well. If you see something in Women's World or Time Magazine or whatever, and it's referencing a study, find the footnote that it's going to. Follow that up. If you have a child who's in college, because a lot of these PubMeds, you can't actually get the full thing, or you got to pay extra for it or whatever. If you have a child in college, say, hey, You as a college student have access to resources in the science building. Go over there, find me this study title, or go find me this RFID on the study, and print me out that thing or email it to me as a PDF, and then you've got it, right? So it's all based upon what is in the literature. That's how you're going to convince folks.
Yes.
In the scientific community, in the medical community. And even then you won't. But you gave it the old college try.
And I want to add, if there's a negative study on keto, dig in a little deeper. All the ones that I saw that were negative, guess how they did the study? Canola oil.
Yeah.
Regular conventional meats from a feedlot full of antibiotics and hormones.
Right.
So if you just go one layer deep on those negative studies, it's easy to find out why the study wasn't good. That's key.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, panel. Really appreciate it. Great information.
I'm part of the panel, by the way. She was thanking me also.
Hi. I first just wanted to say to Brian, all the speakers, the staff, the volunteers, everybody that's been behind this, this has been one of the most incredible experiences of my entire life.
Thank you.
I didn't know about it last year. I heard about it in a podcast. I told my amazingly loving and supportive husband about it, and he said, "You're going." I am also a keto information addict, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that because there's so much information out there. I'm a scientist, so I always want more. So I've got a notebook full. And I don't get into my car and not have a podcast or an Audible playing to make use of all my time.
Sure.
I go to sleep with books. I mean, it's just... But I also can find it a little overwhelming because I find that the more I learn, the more I want to learn, and it's almost like I'm falling behind. This became more real to me in a new way with my daughter, who's 16, and started experiencing depression and suicidal thoughts. And Carrie's, yes, and I know, and then I heard about you with your 17-year-old, and we haven't gone the meds route yet, but we're definitely doing the we're definitely doing the MTH FR as soon as I get home. And so, sorry, there's so much to say, but it's like I love that when I think I know so much, being the information addict I am, that I learned something else new that's so powerful. But what I also wanted to say was I was in the keto closet. I came out after reading Keto Clarity a few years ago, and was essentially kind of shamed, like I'm an idiot. And I didn't know enough back then, like the cholesterol talks, I didn't know enough back then to fully defend it. And so what this conference has done to just give us all that information, I came out of the closet on Facebook the day I left home. And I'm gonna keep going there because this is so powerful and we wanna make that change. So, but I guess kind of coming back to that information thing, do you have a suggestion for maybe someone like me or somebody else who might be overwhelmed because now there is so much coming at us of how to, not keep on changing your plan or deciding I gotta fast longer or I'm fasting too much or I don't know what it is, but I hope that question makes sense.
Do you track your labs in a spreadsheet?
I track everything.
So
I track everything.
I would walk around. I walk around with my lab spreadsheet, like on my phone or my computer, or a laminated version in my purse. And so anytime anybody's like, "Oh, keto doesn't really work," I pull the spreadsheet out and just be like, "Hey, look at. I was like the sickest person in the world. Just a short time ago, and now I'm cured of this and this and this and this." Or I carry my scans around. Those are fun too, but you don't have those. But
Not yet.
that you're you, and so that's kind of been a message of this whole thing. Is a lot of times what I focus on is I listen to all the new information because I get nuggets. But ultimately, my funnest experimentation is just in my own labs. So I'll try one new thing a month, or 2 months, or 3 months. Like I'm playing right now around with different types of fasting and how it affects my labs. So I'm an N=1 in a constant state, and that's what keeps my knowledge growing as opposed to just listening to podcasts. because I learned so much about my body or people who have genetics similar to mine by doing that experimentation. And I find it fascinating. I just love it.
Absolutely.
Carrie? Okay. All right. Gillian?
I think it's important to understand that when you are being shamed by people, you are essentially being shamed by people who are not yet ready to hear the truth, or who are in a state of denial themselves about their own health, and who really just aren't yet ready to get on that same path. So try really hard not to let that hurt you. Let it bounce off. You're a teacher right now. That's what you're doing. So just look at it as, you're in the leading the horse to water phase. That's what you're doing. You're not interested in making anyone drink. You're merely showing them where the oasis is in the desert. That's really what you're doing. So in terms of focusing, I was really blessed in my journey because no one knew a damn thing. 4 years ago, no one, and I'm from Ottawa, Canada, nation's capital, couldn't find a damn person to help me work. But I called Eric Kossoff at Johns Hopkins, and he gave me the lens through which to focus my journey. He put me in touch with the Charlie Foundation, and then everything kind of went from there. So my lens was narrow to begin with, and then I went right down the rabbit hole. And it's a deep rabbit hole, so I get that. But figure out what your goal is. You have a goal, a primary goal, whether that is your daughter's mental health or your physical mitochondrial health, whatever that primary goal is, and work on that. And I think it's really important to do the lab work, to actually, to see the tangible evidence in front of you. And once you've got that goal managed, move to the side. Look peripherally. See what your next step is going to be. And by then, if you focus on that one goal, I bet you dollars to donuts, had to say it, that you will actually have almost all of your issues resolved by then, and then it'll just be a matter of fine-tuning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Jade?
So really quick, to understand your question, are you saying you feel overwhelmed with all the information that's coming out all the time?
Yeah, I think because as I take new things in, I try to find what's the best plan for me moving forward.
Okay.
I mean, and I have had inflammation issues that I was able to combat with keto, which were huge. One after major shoulder surgery and still in significant pain. 8 months later, knee. So that was kind of the first thing that I tackled and such. But the next one is just really getting my body composition to a more healthy level. And so that's the next big one for me. And for my daughter, the mental health issue.
Well, there it is. Those are your things to focus on right there. Basically, it's always going to change. And that's the thing I tell people all the time. What works when you start won't work 6 months from now, won't work from a year from now. Something else will come up. Your hormones will be involved. You'll hit menopause. You'll have stress. You'll realize you're stalling in weight if it's weight loss issues, and you're going to make changes. But when you do that, pick one thing at a time, just like they said, and take it slow and give it time to do what you want, instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, there's all this information out and I want to do all of this. Because if you do that, you're going to get stressed, you're going to get overwhelmed, and you're not going to get the results you want.
Thank
Shawn?
you.
I used to be in that camp too, where it was like all the podcasts, all the books, how much could I possibly learn in the shortest amount of time possible? Because it's so exciting and it's so great and you're learning so much good stuff. But then I realized that in that process, I was also kind of losing touch with myself. And I was like so interested in what that person was doing and that person was saying and that study had found out and all that stuff, that then I forgot to really pay attention to what I was doing and how I was feeling and what wasn't working for me. So I think, so for me, it helped to take some time, not all the time, but I take some time off. So go into your car at sometimes and just listen to your favorite playlist, and just
Do you have a playlist?
I did.
Yeah, music is really great.
I did, but no longer.
I mean, you're not gonna miss out. Like, there's almost also this sense of like FOMO if you aren't always listening to all the podcasts. Trust me, it's not gonna happen.
They'll be there when you
They'll
come
still
back.
be there. They don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So just at least like a couple times a week, just maybe go for a
Take a
walk and
break.
don't have your earbuds in. That kind of thing. It's really great to get back in touch with your own body and what you're feeling and what you should be doing. Because so then you don't have to listen to these other people telling you when and when not to fast, because you know for you.
Yeah, thank you. That's
Carrie,
really good advice.
before Vanessa goes, Carrie, do you want to?
If you need playlists, contact Danny Vega. Danny Vega is the playlist king. He will
Okay,
give
I
you
totally
playlists, the
will.
best playlists ever.
Okay.
But two things. I think as most of these other ladies have said, it's really hard to get like bright shiny object syndrome with, oh my God, they're doing that and that really worked for them, and so do I need to do that, and do I need to do this, and do I need to do that? I think what Jade said is when you tweak things, do one thing at a time, because if you do a whole bunch of stuff, you don't know what it was that made it better or made it worse.
Right.
So you've got to have patience. You've just got to be like, pick one thing, do it for a period of time, see how your body responds. If it's good, keep doing it. If it's bad, stop. Then try the next thing, right? That, for me, is reduce the variables.
Yes.
You actually, although it sounds like that will take you longer, in the long run, that will get you to your goal faster than doing 4 things at once and then being a bit lost as to what was it that actually made the difference for me, or what was it that like stopped me sleeping, and then, so it actually takes longer if you do it that way. And on your point about having to justify why you do what you do in terms of diet to people around you, I mean, my response would be like, hey, I've been alive for 2.5 years. I'm going to keep doing it, right? But that's my specific issue. But for, a generic answer is, when someone attacks you, it's just like, all the time I keep feeling better and better and better. I'm going to keep on doing this.
Yeah.
And move on.
Yeah.
Because nobody can argue with that.
Yeah, I so agree. And that was a big shift for me this time around, because when I first did it, it was for the inflammation and the pain. And that's what I just told people. It's like I had other reasons, but that was an easy one for people. No one's going to say, no, I want you in more pain, right? So
I would, but
that
that's
was
because
an
I'm a
easy
terrible
one.
person. Yeah.
With my doctor 3 weeks ago, did the DEXA scan for the first time, did the blood work. She cringed at the cholesterol. I didn't. I have actually really high HDL cholesterol. And I knew that was just going to be a process. And I'm armed with more information coming back to her for our next appointment. So that part is getting better. And I love the take-home message that we need to train these medical professionals as well through watching us and being our own happy success story.
Right. Vanessa, do you want to?
I just love to tell people I just eat real food. And I don't eat sugar, and I don't eat processed refined food. I eat single ingredient whole foods. And how can anyone argue with that? I mean, it's just real food.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and
not
if they-
this weird woo-woo thing.
If they tell you that sugar is food, tell them that that's a lie. It's poison. It's not food.
It is.
So all
Hey,
these are.
I just had.
ahead.
Have you heard of the genetic test nutritiongenome.com?
No.
So that's a new, better version of 23andMe.
Okay.
So it's going to test almost 3 times the amount of genetic tendencies for your daughter, because MTHFR is just one of many that is involved with mental health. So I wanted to add.
Can you say it again so that people can hear what you're?
It's nutritiongenome.com.
Okay.
You want to get the saliva kit and the reports. So that's problem solved number 1 for daughter. And then for you, I would just monitor 2 things: cortisol and insulin.
Yeah.
Because if that's your goal that you mentioned to Jade, keep it simple, like she said.
Yeah.
If you just focus on a couple things and then play with those.
What's the best way to monitor those 2?
It's blood tests monthly.
Yeah. So just have the doctor have the running order every month. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Last question.
All right, so I just want to say one thing before I ask my question. For all of you guys who are feeling like a little shameful or whatever of revealing their keto, anytime I tell someone I eat high fat, low carb, I feel rebellious. I feel like a badass for going against social norms.
See,
and
yeah.
I think
You
that's
are
the
my
attitude
people.
people need to have.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
love being like, watch me.
Yeah.
Want to bet? Anyways, that's the attitude. So I want to backtrack to the person who was asking about like having like hosting a meal party kind of a deal and get some clarification. So if one was to do that and they were to feed these normal carb, sugar eating people a high fat diet, wouldn't they technically like feel bad afterwards because their body's not used to digesting so much fat?
Not after one meal, no, probably not.
Okay.
No,
And
I doubtful. Now, that's assuming there's no, I'm just stepping all over you, I'm sorry. That's assuming there's no digestive or metabolic problem. You know, assuming they're normal folks who can digest normal food, food normally, not after one meal. And even if they did have some sort of gastric distress, you know, run to the bathroom, whatever, at this point, that would be normal for them anyway.
because I feel like they would feel maybe like not full of energy or whatever. They'd feel like kind of down because their body's like, where's the glucose?
I find the opposite.
Yeah, it's
for a one-time meal. I wasn't sure.
yeah.
Just craving fat, like they haven't had fat for like.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you get a microphone? So.
I just find like my sister. How many people have teenage kids that eat every 5 minutes? She said, "You can't change my son." She was at my house for 48 hours. By the end of the second day, I had fed them so much fat that they were out playing and they forgot it was dinner time. And I was like, "Do you realize it's been 6 hours since your son ate?" She was like, "No."
Right.
But they're happy. I find that people are, all the kids and, you know, they're sitting there eating all their fat. It's almost like, I watch my brother who's on a low-fat diet because of his wife. And
It always is. It always is.
And my brother, when I make a meal, I find him in the kitchen like this, like shoveling whatever I made, because I
Don't
think
look at me.
there's something in our body that wants that fat, that needs that fat, that's telling us to eat that fat, and we're not allowing our bodies to have it.
Right.
So try it, experiment, tell us what happens.
I can promise you, people who are like, they fear fat, you give them a fatty meal, they're going to love it. They
I
just
feel
are.
like they're gonna freak out and be like, "Oh my God, what did you do to me?"
Don't let him watch you cook it. That's the thing.
I know,
Sorry,
but if you
sorry.
wanna-
Can you microphone? Okay, she said don't let them watch you cook it is the thing.
I know, but if you want to tell them afterwards, like, this was keto, this is high fat, low carb, this is the way you should be eating, kind of a deal.
This is delicious.
If you want to really, really get it to them, just like do it as you're chomping on like open a stick of butter like a banana, and you're like, all right. And by the way, that's what you were eating. Yeah.
That will scare them.
Yeah.
I
That's
think that'd
just
be
me.
fun.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.